Greetings. Welcome to my podcast. My name is Mike Bankhead. I am your host. I am a bass player and songwriter from the Gem City, Dayton, Ohio. My guest today is Ben Monat. Ben is a guitar player from Massachusetts, and this conversation is going to sound like two dudes sitting around having a beer, talking about music. You know, what musicians do. Now, these are usually informal conversations. This one's a little bit extra informal. And we're going to get into gear and how Ben got started in making music and really the value of collaboration. Let's get to it.
Hey, you're Ben. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Mike. It's a pleasure to be on the podcast here with you.
First of all, I don't really know how to pronounce your last name, so I would like you to pronounce that for me so I don't mess it up.
Oh, yeah, you bet, Mike. It's Monat.
Okay, so no silent letters.
Yeah, it's funny. I get Monet, and I'm like, I think if I was related to Monet, I'd be able to be retired by now. But
that would be if it was an E-T, though.
That is very true.
I was gonna guess Monat, but I would have been wrong.
I like, I do kind of like the Monat, and you know what? I might kind of have to break that out in the future.
If you're around a French person, just don't say the T in your set. You were from Massachusetts.
You bet. Yep.
You play guitar, which is something I don't play.
Yes. Yeah. So I do play the guitar. If you want, I'll just kind of give you a quick background of my musical history, if that's cool.
I do, and it doesn't have to be quick.
Okay.
I'm not in a rush here.
All right, cool. Me neither. So I got into music when I was 4 years old, and my mom was really enthusiastic about me playing the violin, which I have a lot of respect for the violin. But the thing is, when I was growing up, I realized I still have ADHD. So, sitting there practicing classical music while I have a deep appreciation for it, I think by the time I got to be 10 or 11 years old, I was like, wow, this is just, it's a little too slow for my speed. So I remember, my parents used to get, whatever the local newspaper was. This was the eastern part of Massachusetts, so Sharon, Massachusetts. And they saw something and it's like, hey, if you're interested in playing guitar like the bands of Green Day and Blink-182, here's a guitar teacher that can teach you this type of music. And I thought, whoa, I said, this is great. So, it's funny, Mike, I remember going to my first lesson at 11 years old, and I played Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star on the electric guitar. But I still remember playing the notes and just kind of remember the feeling, no joke, it felt like there was electricity pulsing, through my hands. And I said, this is absolutely, going to be my instrument. So from there, I got into, some of the pop punk music, rock and roll. Kind of funny is when I was in high school, I was in my jazz band. And again, with the ADHD, I used to do like a whole bunch of tinkering. Like the poor jazz band teacher would try to be like, hey, someone else in the band, can you try this? And I'd be like, so he was very patient with me. But yeah, just, the guitar is something, it's a great way to communicate, meet other people, and just to, it sounds very cliche, but also just to really express myself to what's going on.
So, based on the influences you listed first, I'm going to guess you're in your early 30s.
That is spot on. I am 32.
Wow, I remember being 32. It was a long time ago. All right, so I would actually normally save this question for later, but I think it's relevant since we're kind of talking about your origins. Think about the first song you can remember hearing in your entire life. What was that?
Oh my gosh, that is a really good question. You know what?
So this is going to be obviously way before you were 11 and learning guitar.
Oh yeah, for sure. No, I think a good way I can answer that is, so when I was growing up, my mom took me to a bunch of plays and musicals, so much so that I thought going to a play that was seeing a movie. And just, I remember going to, West Side Story. Really just kind of, I think I saw all the classics. Unfortunately, I can't remember them right now. But then also too, kind of having played the violin, yeah, I actually kind of think just remember hearing Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Stars, like 4 years old. But it's just something about the simplicity of Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star that was like, oh wow, this is kind of catchy.
I've never learned it.
Yeah.
I mean, we all know how to sing it, but I've never actually learned how to play it.
Yeah.
Maybe it's so catchy because that's also the melody that we use to teach kids how to say the alphabet in our language.
That is such a good point. I never considered that. Wow. Wow. Yeah, you're A, B, C, D, E, F, G. That is wow. I never put the two and two together.
It is. I mean, if you want, obviously, we want children to remember the thing, and usually we teach it to them. I shouldn't say we. I don't have any kids. We, as a society, teach it to them before they are old enough to read, or sometimes make super coherent paragraphs in speech. So simple and hooky has got to be your requirements for an alphabet song.
Absolutely. And actually, you bring up a great point there, Mike, is that, music that's catchy because, after kind of my stage of playing the guitar of like the Green Day and Blink-182, I got very deep into kind of, metal music, like bands like Metallica, for instance. And I was a little bit surprised, like, when I was my only friend that really liked Metallica. And then I think I learned, for them, songs that were 8 minutes and 30 seconds long wasn't exactly catchy. And that's actually one reason why I do actually really like listening to the radio, even just pop music, because to me, just hearing, what's catchy, what, was an instant song, that people can sing right away. That's kind of something that's always fascinated me a little bit.
Do you ever learn how to play the current pop hits as you're listening to the radio?
That is really good. That's a good question. Sometimes what I'll do is, if I'm kind of playing the guitar, maybe I'll have the chorus in my head and maybe just start to play a few notes of it. This is a little bit off topic, but speaking of catchy songs, did you ever watch a show Where in the World is Carmen Sandiego? It was on in the early 90s.
Yeah, I remember it very fondly.
Oh, awesome! So you have the chorus. Where in the world is Carmen Sandiego?
Carmen Sandiego. Yeah, it's. I mean, I'm a lot older than you, and I don't think I'm ever gonna forget that tune.
Oh, it's epic. And so one of the things I do for fun around here is I play at some open mics. And so, just more for fun. I'm very much an amateur musician, but one of the things I try to do, it's like a stream of consciousness on the guitar. And it was actually funny. I think I was playing just a few weeks ago, and that melody came into my mind, and then I started just kind of playing like a little bit of a groove, and it was kind of fun to see how many people in the room, like they recognized it, and they were like, "Oh wow, this is pretty neat that this person's kind of weaving it into their set."
So you said you're an amateur. That only means that you don't get paid to play.
Very true.
It has really nothing to do with your chops or how proficient you might be. Nowadays, so you've been doing this for a long time. Nowadays, when you decide to pick up the guitar and practice or learn something, what kind of music are you gravitating toward these days?
Definitely. So I think when I play the guitar, I can break it up into kind of two moods. One mood is I'm really tired after a long day of work or just whatever is going on. I just kind of want to plug it in. I want to play some power chords or just, chords are incredibly simple to play and kind of get out the, the emotion. When it comes down to songs that I'm learning, there's this band Phish, Phish, that's been very influential. Kind of coming back to myself being a teenager, it was, a music that went 100 miles an hour. And then I heard the music of Phish, and I love the melodies. And there's actually a lot of aspects to their music that's very metal influenced. But
they have really long compositions, right?
They do, absolutely. People joke, it's like, oh yeah, hey, do you want to sit down and watch a sitcom, or you want to listen to a Phish song? But in learning some of those compositions, I've really enjoyed sitting down and trying to learn them because it's helped me to explore music and the notes on the guitar in a different way than my mind ever would have previously.
That is not something I would have expected, considering that you led with Green Day and Blink-182. Like, hippie jam band is a completely different approach to the instrument and the idea of what is a song supposed to do, a different approach to that as well.
Absolutely. I think that actually describes, kind of what I like to do is I think if a song is written authentically, I try to listen to it. Like here's a great concert I went to back in 2015 or 16. It was George Clinton. He came to Western Massachusetts and he played at this. It's kind of like it's like an abandoned amusement park. It was big in the 80s, but now it's just some beautiful trees and the kind of you sit on the grass. And just to hear him and his entire ensemble play, because they're really big, with the funk music. And it's way different than rock and roll, because funk is all about the one, right? I think there's a video where Bootsy Collins describes it.
Fellow Ohio and Bootsy, that's what he says. The one.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, what I just try to think is like, if there's music I'm listening to, if I can kind of turn it on its head and listen to kind of whatever comes out of that, then I'm like, okay, I think I'm going in the right direction.
I think going to see giant music legends like George Clinton is never a bad idea.
For sure. Absolutely.
Do you write?
Oh, do I write? That's a great question. Yes, actually. So for the longest time, I would just do, improvisations. But during the pandemic, I said, hey, let me pick up the guitar and write something. And for some reason, the sport of NASCAR has always interested me. I don't watch it, but the endurance of having to go pretty much in the same direction for 5 or 6 hours at 200 miles an hour. It was something it's very intriguing, the focus you have to do, the training. So what I actually did is I wrote a song called The NASCAR Driver, and I went on YouTube and I watched like old races, like from 2004. And what I try to do in this song is I try to write it from the perspective of a rookie NASCAR driver with all of the nerves and fear that they might experience. But then, when you're going 200 miles around a racetrack, you kind of have to get into it pretty quickly. The learning curve probably it's not too, you kind of have to go right into it. And Mike, that was a really big accomplishment for me because that required me not only to write the music, but also be very intentional with the words, make sure that they flowed and that they would fit in the music.
Did writing that song make you want to, all right, now I'm going to be a songwriter guy? Or was the level of difficulty such that you're like, I don't know how these songwriter people do the thing?
Yeah, I think it was frankly more towards the latter because, in thinking back to it, the main riff for the song I'd been working on for 5 or 6 years. And to think about, musicians, they can make a record every year, every other year. And to have it be quality music, I think as musicians, we're always kind of hard on ourselves.
Yeah.
Yep. But yeah, I definitely think I would like to write more music moving forward. But one thing that's kind of I struggle with is finding the motivation for lyrics, actually.
Well, you could always find a co-writer for that.
That's a great point.
There are other ways, and I was going to discuss the other ways when we weren't recording. But while we're recording, hey, there is nothing wrong with grabbing yourself a lyricist. There are a lot of people that write and don't know how to make music and either are not inclined or feel intimidated by the prospect of learning an instrument. But they want to write songs, and all those people need is to buddy up with a musician that struggles to write lyrics.
Wow, no, that is
all you got to do is find a lyricist. They're out there.
Yeah, for sure. Actually, let me, if you don't mind me asking you a question, Mike, just based off that.
Go ahead.
Is, from your experience, how have you found lyricists that you mesh well with, or maybe actually ask another question then, or do you just kind of do all the writing, both the music and the lyrics yourself?
So it depends on the project. I actually have a project where I have a co-writer. We take completely different approaches to songwriting, and this is the thing that fascinates me about the craft, is that none of the songwriters ever, no two of us do the thing the same way, which means there's really no right answer, right? It's whatever works for you. My co-writer is very much a lyrics first co-writer, and her lyrics tend to be more poetic. And while I think that that is useful and valid as an art form, I also think that sometimes poetry does not make for good song lyrics, because poetry and songs are not the same art form. So it's, I'm always, I shouldn't say always, I'm 95% of the time I write the music first, the harmony, the harmonic structure, the chord progression first. Because remember, I don't play guitar, so I'm usually composing on a piano, but since I'm a bass player, the low end is always forefront in my mind. Usually chord progression, harmonics first, melody second, which takes me forever. And then once I know how much syllables I have to fool with, I worry about the lyrics. So co-writing with someone who has a different approach, as you might imagine, is a bit of a challenge. Sometimes I finish the music and say, here, put lyrics on it. Sometimes each of us writes a song entirely and the other person just makes like changes. Most of the time, though, I do it all myself. Not that I'm opposed to, like, if I ran into a stray lyricist that wanted to work with someone to make music, I would totally do that, because I think that collaborating is one of the things in music that brings not only joy, but also it could take art to a place that otherwise wouldn't go, because all of us have our own limitations and ways of seeing the world. And if you let someone else in who sees something different, the two or three of you can create something better than any one of you could have, which is why historically, right, Lennon and McCartney, and I was going to say Elton John and the dude that writes all his stuff. Collaboration is important.
Is it? Yeah.
Bernie Taupin, that's his name. Yeah.
Yes. Yep. That is.
So I would encourage you, go find a lyricist. If you're really serious about, man, I want to crank out songs. It seems like you have enough music background and skills that the music's not going to be a problem for you. So dig up a lyricist and make records.
Hey, no, thank you so much for that suggestion. No, you know what? That's a great idea. I never considered, maybe going out and finding a lyricist, but I think what you're saying makes a lot of sense, because, then that way, if music is more in my wheelhouse, I can just focus on the music, and perhaps I could send them, hey, this is what I was thinking, for the structure of a song, then they can listen to it. And if their specialty is putting words on paper, then they can say, hey, Ben, yeah, this is what I was thinking of. And I also think too, Mike, you said something great about collaborating with other people. Like, that's just the way my mind works in general. Like, when I'm able to collaborate with other people, just hear their thoughts and feedback, I find my creative process grows and is I guess comes to fruition.
Yeah, we are the sum of our influences as musicians, right? So kind of, in a way, we're like the product. I mean, mentally, we collaborate with everything we've ever heard to make something new. Just think about multiplying that power by however many people you have in the writing room. I was going to ask you about your gear, since most guitarists I know are a little crazy about their gear, and they love talking about it. So what kind of guitars do you have? I assume you have more than one, because guitarists tend to accumulate them.
Yep. Yeah, so absolutely. So when it comes to the first guitar, that I ever got, I think it was actually a Stella. It was, made in the 1950s or 60s. It was an acoustic. It was from my Aunt Barbara. She passed it down to me. And this was the action. It was just so ridiculously high off the neck. So meaning you really had to press down hard on the strings to get a note out. So then essentially I was able to convince my parents, after that, I'm like, hey, just get me the electric guitar. I promise it won't be like the violin. I'll practice it more than once a week. And yeah, they said, fine, we'll get you a starter one. And that was an Ibanez. So, it's a beautiful white guitar. I still have it to this day. And believe it or not, that was my only guitar I had for 13 years. So it's funny, on the neck, the fretboards are definitely worn down on that. And believe it or not, we're just talking about collaborating with people. So I found 2 guitar sets on Etsy, altogether was like $300. One of them was a semi-hollow body, so a little more resonant. And then the other one had 7 strings. So if you think of a band like Slipknot, the low B string. So I had a good friend, he painted it. Another friend of his did the electronics. And those have been really fun guitars to play, just because, like we were talking earlier, Mike, is, in my mind, I love the different, I guess, kind of types of music, but being able to play a lot of different types of music is very important. Let me just pause there, because like you said, us guitarists, we can kind of go on and on.
I don't mind. Like, this is most of it I won't understand, but all of my friends who play guitar are gonna be on the edge of their seats.
Okay, cool.
So you don't have to censor yourself here.
Okay, all right, sounds good. But this is the funny thing when it comes to gears is I do not like having a lot of pedals. Like I was talking before about Fish, and all these different bands. They have 30, 40 pedals. For me, where I do kind of get wonky about is the distortion pedals. Because, within the distortion pedals, it's like, the color blue, light blue, dark blue, ocean blue. That's kind of how I see the distortion pedals. But what I've actually found, and this is something I would say to all guitarists, myself included, but if you're not getting the tone that you want, it's probably because you need to warm up more and you need to practice more.
So you subscribe more to the tone comes from your fingers and your hands more so than the gear you're playing through.
Absolutely.
That's pretty interesting. The guitarists I know are forever tinkering with their pedal board in search of tone stuff. I'm just like, I'm a bass player. I'm very simple. Just plug me in and turn the thing up.
Yeah, that's right. Speaking of bass, though, I will say, one of my favorite just effects pedals is the envelope filter.
It's a pretty cool pedal. If you're gonna play funk music, it's one of those things you need to have handy. You guys, by which I mean you guitarists, have so many choices. And one of the things that I always wonder, how do you choose? So, for you, with all those sounds at your disposal, how do you decide what you're going to pick when you're noodling around?
Absolutely. To me, it almost kind of comes down to there's, a few different types of guitarists who are, my guitar heroes. The first one, I would say Eddie Van Halen, who is the classic tinkerer. This was someone I think who actually submitted patents for, ways the guitar could be held when you're standing up, just so he could, play it differently, had all the different types of pedal board out there. And then another guitar hero of mine, James Hetfield from Metallica, he's really known for his percussive right hand. So a lot of the down picking being very consistent. And what it is just about what really fits a song or what fits the mood. I've been guilty of this. A lot of guitarists are, I'm sure, guilty of this. But sometimes we say, okay, what would sound really cool? Let's just, press all the buttons and see what they do, But I think, though, and this really kind of comes down to playing music with other people. It's really listening to other people and finding out what's going to complement them. And as a guitarist, I think one thing the guitarists we're guilty of is we take up too much space in a jam. So we're like, oh, wow, look, I've got all these really high notes. And, but that's the thing is then you take away from the beauty of the bass or the horn section or the piano or the drums, So I think what I would prefer to do is to kind of give everyone, kind of the space they need so that they can let their musicality shine. And then if it is time for a guitar solo, really do the listening. And I think the listening will inform, what type of effects, delay, whatever that is, that will really complement the song. And that will help to transition to the next part of the song as well.
That's a really good answer. I like that. Basically, it comes back to collaboration again, because you said listen to other people. I only have two more questions, and then we'll let you get on for the rest of your evening. The first one I stole from a defunct podcast here in town that I really love very much, and I always give them credit for having stolen their question. So thanks, Terry. It is, what did your childhood smell like?
Ooh, what did my childhood smell like? Well, my childhood, some very interesting smells. I grew up in a very religious Jewish background. So one of the smells that I remember, so essentially for religious Jews, they try not to do any cooking from sundown Friday to sundown on Saturday. And, in the wintertime,
Shabbat, right?
Shabbat, that's right, absolutely. So on Friday, when in the wintertime, when the Shabbat starts at, call it 4 p.m., and it's cold outside, you kind of want something that's going to be nice for the Shabbat day. Again, you can't really cook. So a lot of Jewish people, they make a stew. And I remember the stew, it's called a cholent, Choulent. It's got potatoes, meat. You can put onions, kind of different types of spices. And just what I remember too is, when you come home from temple, is just having that smell permeate the entire house. And just, you knew, even though you're a little cold, that you're about to sit down to an epic meal.
That sounds like one of them warm, comforting memories. We all like childhood food memories.
I know, right? Like it's something about it. I don't know, obviously I'm not a brain scientist, but something I think about, like a warm, comforting smell. It kind of like warms up the rest of the body. And yeah, I have to say, I think when it comes to smells, really, and I love food. My friends love poking fun at me for, how much I get excited for food. But yeah, I think that's a smell that really resonates with me.
Outstanding. Last question is, where can people find you, find your music, or if they want to contact you on the social stuff?
Absolutely, Mike. Hey, thank you so much. So my YouTube channel, it's called Rock Out Considerably. And I've had the channel for about 5 years now. I try to cover a whole bunch of different types of music. I would recommend, if you do listen, is turn the volume down on your listening device, because some of the stuff gets a little loud. And also, too, I do not know how to record with a microphone or anything. So it's just my voice and the guitar going right into the phone. Actually, Mike, the way that we got connected was through the Polywork website.
Outstanding platform.
Yeah, I've been super impressed with it because, LinkedIn is great, but the thing is, I like how Polywork's a lot more about the collaboration. So if anyone wants to look me up, I'm under Ben, Ben, Monat, Monat.
I would say also that Polywork is more about you, the individual as a whole, and not just corporate you. Thus the name, Polywork. There's a place for us there to put that we podcast, or that we write songs, or that we like to travel, or whatever you do apart from your work stuff. Polywork wants to accommodate that. And if you're looking for help or collaborators, it'll help you find that. So yeah, you are correct. You are not my first guest from Polywork, and probably you won't be my last. In fact, if you're looking for a lyricist, I'll bet you could find one on Polywork. Just write up an opportunity and describe what you're looking for in enough detail, and people will definitely come a knocking. And then it's just a matter of picking who you want to work with.
That's an excellent idea. Yeah, right. Because you're right. The whole point of the platform is about that personal collaboration. I think that's a good idea. I'm going to do some thinking about it and put something out there. So if you're listening to this podcast, check out under Ben Monat for opportunity. If you're a lyricist, amateur, professional, whatever, just want to have some fun, and please reach out.
Thanks for your time, Ben. I really do appreciate it. Have a lovely rest of your evening.
Hey, thanks so much, Mike. You too.
Thanks once again to Ben Monat for joining me and talking about music. Thank you, dear listener, for being here with us as well. If you are motivated to do so, I would like to ask you to click that like button or that subscribe button on whatever platform you happen to be listening to this podcast on. Leave a kind review. That would also be helpful. I wish you a lovely weekend. Bye.